Hi everyone, many thanks for joining, really appreciate it. Whilst we wait for others to join, I will update on a few things of relevance. So in February we were pleased to publish the second phase of our impact assessment, impact evaluation of the AWS Standard system. Focusing on the good water governance outcome of the AWS Standard, the evaluation confirms the AWS certification drives positive water stewardship impacts, gives sites higher profile and credibility, and provides structure and motivation for continued improvement. Please could you review the report yourselves. There's a link to it coming in the chat now, I believe, or it can be downloaded from the resources section of our website later on. I'd say that it's particularly useful for any of you that are looking to build a case internally for investing in certification. Next up, a reminder that the AWS Global Water Stewardship Forum takes place in Edinburgh on Tuesday the 23rd and Wednesday the 24th of June. I'm a little bit biased, but I'd say that the AWS Forum is a highlight of every year. If you've never been, then I would strongly recommend doing so. General admission is now open. Members each receive a free ticket, so that means that spaces are often limited, so I'd advise you to register sooner rather than later. Alongside colleagues from the water stewardship community, we'll also be hosting another Waterlogs event, which runs all day on the Thursday the 25th in the same venue as the AWS Forum. Registrations for that are opening shortly, so please also bear that in mind if booking travel. Next, we're also pleased to offer simultaneous interpretation for this session into French. So to change to French, please use the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your screen. It might be located in the More section. Once selected, you'll hear the sessions in French. If you have any issues, please just message us in the chat. So that's housekeeping generally over, and on to today's session. For those that don't know me, I'm Scott McCready. I am Chief Strategy Officer at the Alliance for Water Stewardship. I'm going to introduce the agenda you see on screen and then chair the Q&A at the end. Before I get to that, I just want to open with a few words on why today is an important day in the evolution of water stewardship and the evolution of AWS. The International Water Stewardship Standard, more commonly known by everyone as the AWS Standard, is really central to what the Alliance for Water Stewardship is. It's a core manifestation of our mission to ignite and nurture global and local leadership on credible water stewardship. We're really pleased and proud of the changes that have been made. We see them as enhancing practicality, so it's easier to use. Utility, it connects with wider sustainability frameworks, wider sustainability issues. And value, it takes less resource to implement. And it does all this without minimising the standard's impact. So in a world in which the water cycle is intensifying, climate change is increasing unpredictability, water quality concerns are growing, and businesses are facing rising scrutiny and consumer expectations, we think that version 3 equips companies to respond to the realities with greater confidence and effectiveness. So last week we officially launched version 3 via an in-person event in Tokyo. Our virtual session today continues the introduction by walking you through what's new in version 3.0. To begin with, we'll hear from my colleague José González, who's the Head of Capacity Development and System Integrity. José leads the unit responsible for managing the standard and certification. Thereafter, José will hand over to Tyler Farrow, AWS Standards Manager. Tyler's the person who led the revision process, so thank you, Tyler. Tyler will then hand to Technical Committee members Christina, Mallin and Rolf, Hogan, who will offer some reflections on the new standard and the process that led to it. Then we'll hear from an AWS member who has a lot of experience in using the standard, Mickaël, Clément of Nestlé Waters Premium Beverages. After Mickaël, Tyler will then close off the presentations by highlighting some key points in the transition to version 3. Hopefully this will have answered all of your questions, but if not, we have time for some Q&A at the end. Please put your Q&A into the chat box. One thing I will say is, if time is limited, I will be selecting questions with the most universal relevance. So I'm not going to be going through the questions in kind of like submission order. I'll be looking for questions which have a wider universal relevance. Because time is tight. With that, I will now hand over to José.
Thanks, Scott, and hi everyone. Welcome to this session introducing the new version of the Alliance for Water Stewardship Standard. It is a pleasure to have you all here. My name is José Manuel González, and I am the Head of Integrity and Capacity Development within AWS. Voluntary standards for sustainability are complex systems by definition, since they try to encompass many different topics, all of them are interrelated into a set of verifiable requirements that can work independently as a methodology for implementation, but also can be something audited as a part of a certification process. AWS, as a member of the ICL Alliance, stick to the ICL credibility principles, and we are also compliant with the ICL code that defines the value of a credible sustainability system. Following these principles for continuous improvement and trying to keep adding value to the users, we review the standard every 5 years at least, and we do that through a process that is global, inclusive, transparent, and shaped by consensus. The new version we are introducing this week is the outcome of a complex and long review process that started in mid-2023 and culminated at the end of 2025 with overwhelming support during the vote for its approval among the members of our alliance. During these 2.5 years, successive drafts of the new version were developed considering the feedback received, reducing ambiguity, removing redundancy, increasing practicality as well, paying attention to growing concerns like climate change effects or the biodiversity depending on freshwater ecosystem, but also integrating all the lessons learned from the use of the previous versions of the standard in the last 10 years. The result, what you have today in your hands, is a genuine reflection of the consensus of the stakeholders' contribution. We received more than 3,000 comments coming from more than 30 countries, but also the dedication and passion for water stewardship of the members of the Alliance for Water Stewardship Technical Committee that include private companies, public sector, and civil society organizations. This version 3.0 of our standard is shorter in the number of requirements, but allows for a streamlined implementation of the core elements. There is an interlink in between stakeholders' engagement and collective action, while we are continuously pushing for improvement on site, but also promoting leadership at catchment level. At the same time, the changes are aiming to strengthen clarity, support inclusivity, and enable more effective action in the face of the water challenges that are becoming ever more complex. So I would like to thank you for your contributions on the new standard, the contribution to water stewardship, and the recognition you give to our methodology. And I would like to pass now the floor to my colleague Tyler, that will introduce you the details on the review and the revision process, as well as the main elements of the new standard version. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jose, and thanks everyone for being here. My name is Tyler Farrow. I'm Standards Manager at AWS. I think it's a really special day. Scott talked about the launch last week in Tokyo, and this is really a continuation of that. And I think it marks a really important milestone for the organization and for water stewardship practice. I'd say myself personally, I've been involved with the standard for a little over a decade now, which is hard to believe. I first got involved supporting sites in East Africa. One of those sites, I think, was the third site in the world to be certified. So it's really amazing to see how far we've come. And I'm excited to see where we go next with this new version of the standard. Before I really get into the content of today's session, I'd just like to thank the team. There's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into getting us to this point around the revision and everything that supported it. So a huge thanks to the AWS team who's really come together and gone above and beyond these last several months. So I'm going to be speaking about a little bit about the revision process and then giving an overview of essentially what's changed in the new version of the standard. So as was alluded to, when we set out on this revision process, we had 3 primary aims in mind. The first was was practicality. So to create a streamlined version of the standard for companies to be able to implement cost effectively at scale. The second was around utility. So this is about alignment with wider sustainability agendas and priorities, which are connected to water. And the third was value, having strengthened integration with corporate level reporting. I'll be speaking more about those, but I feel fairly confident that we've achieved those aims with version 3. In terms of the governance and decision making for this process, as José mentioned, we followed ICL's code of good practice for the revision, which I think is a really useful framework for sustainability systems like ours. It was AWS Technical Committee that had overall responsibility for essentially guiding this process and approving the final draft before it went to the members. And then ultimately, it was you, AWS members, who voted to adopt version 3 of the standard. So I mentioned the technical committee. These are the members of the AWS Technical Committee. For those who are unfamiliar, the technical committee is the governance body of AWS, which is responsible for standards, guidance, and certification requirements. They're elected by the members, and they represent 3 chambers of membership at AWS, which are civil society, private sector, and public sector. So as a balanced membership of 4 members from each, really with representation from around the world. So I'd like to offer a huge thanks to the TC. They've been exceptionally devoted and patient throughout this whole process. Typically we would meet maybe quarterly as a group. I'd say for the last year and a half, we've been meeting pretty much monthly. So they've really gone above and beyond in terms of their offering their time and their energy. So I'd like to give a huge thanks to them. And luckily, we'll be hearing from 2 members of the TEC today. We have Rolf, Hogan, and Christina, Mallin, who'll be offering their reflections. José mentioned the development process. So really, we set out on this process in 2023. We started off by doing a review of version 2 of the standard. So we heard from many of you. We did a survey where we had 235 respondents, really offering their reflections and their thoughts on version 2 and how it could be improved. That review led to the decision to undertake a major revision of the standard and create version 3.0. And at that time that we kind of determined the aims, the 3 aims for the revision process, as well as some of the priorities for revision. So from there, we developed working papers and proposals, which were reviewed by the TC to develop a first draft of version 3. We conducted a public consultation on that first draft where we received over 2,100 comments from 105 respondents, I believe from 29 countries. So we took some time to sift through those comments, to analyze the feedback, identify the substantive issues, and develop a second draft, which then went out for a second round of public consultation. We received over 1,200 comments from 82 respondents in that round, again from 29 countries. We then analyzed that feedback to, again, see what were the remaining issues and develop a final draft, which was then approved by the TC. So that took us to the member vote. So after being approved by the technical committee, the final draft of version 3 went to AWS membership for a vote between November 24th and December 15th of last year. The vote was subject to our vote balancing methodology, which is really to ensure there's equal influence across the 3 membership categories of civil society, private sector, and public sector. And we're very pleased that version 3 was approved with 93% respondents voting in favor and an overall turnout of just over 43%. So I think this kind of resounding approval gives us the confidence that we need in version 3, and gives us a good signal in terms of its adoption and implementation from here. So I'm going to be providing a high-level overview of what we say are kind of the most significant changes to version 3 of the standard. A detailed summary of changes document is available for download. There'll be a link put in the chat right now. So you can read that at your leisure, and that really goes requirement by requirement to say what's changed between version 2 and version 3. So today I'll really be focusing kind of at the high level. So I'll start off maybe with what hasn't changed, which is that the overall framework of the AWS Standard has largely remained the same. So we still have the 5 steps, which are gather and understand, commit and plan, implement, evaluate, communicate, and disclose. And for each step, we have criteria, which have then a number of requirements for conformance. So that hasn't changed. That overall framework and structure is still the same because we've had good feedback on that, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. The standard's intended to achieve 5 outcomes, which are good water governance, sustainable water balance, good water quality status, healthy freshwater ecosystems and their biodiversity, and safe water, sanitation, and hygiene for all. So of the outcome areas, we just had one of them which changed in this round of revision, which I'll be talking about, and that's healthy freshwater ecosystems and their biodiversity. But again, the standard is still aims to achieve those 5 water stewardship outcomes. So in terms of streamlining of the standard, this is one of our kind of major aims when we set out. The version 3 of the standard has 72 requirements, which were previously known as indicators in version 2. That's 26 fewer than were in version 2. So it's significantly shortened. Now, initially hearing that, you might be concerned about kind of, well, what was cut, what was lost. We're confident that the comprehensiveness of the standard has been retained while we removed kind of redundant or low value requirements from the standard. So a lot of effort went into, identifying those aspects of the standard which were kind of repetitious or weren't offering value to users to create essentially a leaner, streamlined version that still had the same rigor and comprehensiveness. Another thing you'll notice in version 3 is we've kind of adjusted the balance between kind of core, gold, and platinum requirements to improve the accessibility of the standard for those who are starting out while retaining rigor. So the core requirements of the standard really represent the essential elements of good water stewardship practice, while gold and platinum requirements recognize higher levels of ambition and achievement in terms of water stewardship performance. Another really important area, I think, in the version 3 is around improved auditability. We really sought to make the standard requirements clearer for both implementers and auditors alike. We've set clear minimum expectations for conformance to reduce room for interpretation. I think maybe those who have used the standard before maybe have recognized maybe some ambiguity in terms of the wording of requirements. We really sought to tighten things up. So essentially everyone had the same understanding and to reduce any sort of room for disagreement and interpretation between parties. So some of these changes, I think, are fairly subtle, just in terms of tweaks to wording, but I think their impact is significant. A second big area here was we set thresholds for performance against the 5 outcome areas of the standard at the core, gold, and platinum level in step 3. So the AWS standard is largely a process or management standard. Now we've essentially implemented these thresholds to include kind of performance levels to essentially say what is good enough to be considered at the core, the gold, and the platinum levels in terms of delivering against the outcome areas. So in my mind, this is one of the most significant changes to the standard and one that I hope will drive increased impact. And the third area here is around advanced requirements. So version 3 features a smaller focus set of advanced requirements at the gold and platinum levels. And these build logically on the core requirements to provide a pathway for continual improvement. And I'll speak a little bit more about those. So in terms of advanced certification, so conformance against all the core requirements it remains the minimum for certification against the standard. For gold, sites that seek to obtain a certificate at the gold level must meet all of the core requirements as well as a set of 15 gold requirements. And then platinum sites have to conform with all of the core and gold requirements, plus a distinct set of platinum requirements associated with the relevant outcome areas. So this is one of the more significant changes, which is that platinum certification is now particular to the individual outcome areas. So you can be a platinum certified site in water governance or in water governance and water balance. This approach was taken in part for UCAS accreditation of our system, really to kind of strengthen the rigor and then the credibility of our system. I think it's also a pretty significant improvement in terms of really setting out a clear path for continual improvement of sites. So previously in version 2, we had a number of advanced requirements that had associated points with them that sites could kind of pick and choose to reach a threshold of scoring. Whereas this time, the gold and platinum requirements really build kind of on what's there at the core level. So rather than kind of having to implement additional things, it's about higher levels of achievement on the same topics. So I think this should improve the, efficiency of the audit process and really provide a clear path for continual improvement. I mentioned earlier the change to the outcome area. So on freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity, we changed the outcome from important water-related areas to healthy freshwater ecosystems and their biodiversity. First off, I think we had a number of issues in terms of understanding of the previous IWRA outcome. I think there was a lot of different understandings of what really qualified as an IWRA, what didn't. It was a term that only really existed within the AWS standard. So there was a bit of a barrier there for understanding implementation. We also wanted to really highlight the importance of biodiversity within the standard. So previously in version 2, the word biodiversity didn't appear within the text. So we've made this change. The revised requirements now focus on the identification and assessment of freshwater ecosystems and species, and development and implementation of targets and actions to protect, conserve, and restore them. Now, we've been careful to retain the social and cultural elements, which were part of the IWRA outcome, and which we heard from our stakeholders are very important. We've retained those through some revised requirements to respect the social, cultural, and recreational uses of water within the catchment. So we hope that this change in standard will really foreground the importance of biodiversity and lead to more robust outcomes in this area. Another area was climate and resilience. When we first did the review of version 2 of the standard, this came through really as a top priority for the revision process, was integrating climate and resilience. We've introduced new core requirements for sites to understand climate trends and water-related impacts in the catchment, including changes in precipitation, extreme events like floods and droughts. And we've introduced a gold level requirement for sites to climate-proof their water stewardship plan to build resilience to water risks associated with climate trends within the catchment. We've also made revisions to ensure that the version 3 of the standard is applicable to sites that depend on desalinated water, as well as to recognize and encourage water reuse where appropriate. The next substantive area is collective action. So AWS standard outcomes, typically cannot be achieved fully for a catchment by a single site. I think we all realize that we can't do water stewardship alone, that we really rely on collective action to achieve the outcomes that we want. So we recognize that collective action is an important principle of good water stewardship and a feature of the standard. And to recognize that, we've included collective action requirements at the core gold and platinum levels of the standard to varying degrees. So rather than treating collective action as a kind of yes or no question, it's really a spectrum. So there's requirements at the core level, which then build successively at the gold and platinum levels to recognize higher levels of ambition and achievement when it comes to collective action. So again, this was, I believe, in the first or the second draft, we kind of had collective action there as a yes or no, and we heard feedback that really that from our stakeholders that collective action should be featured at the core level of the standard, given its importance. And finally, is around strengthen integration with corporate level reporting. Again, this was a high priority for the revision process, as we heard from our stakeholders during the review process. Double materiality has been incorporated into version 3 through new requirements to identify water-related impacts and dependencies as a precursor to identifying risks and opportunities. Version 3 is also highly interoperable with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive standard on water. So it's ESRS E3 water standard. So the information that's gathered in the process of implementing version 3 of the standard can directly inform reporting on all of the E3 indicators, including policies, targets, and actions related to water. Also, a subtle change is you'll notice that the glossary in the standard has been pretty significantly revamped and references provided. We really sought to align our definitions with other reporting frameworks, such as the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, TNFD, as well as CDP. So I believe that there's greater alignment with reporting frameworks as well as other water stewardship initiatives and tools within the glossary. So that is a fairly rapid overview of the changes in version 3 of the standard. As I said, there's a detailed summary document which gives you a breakdown requirement by requirement. So I would encourage you to download that and review it. But this should give you a flavor of what's changed. I will hand it back over to Scott briefly, who will introduce the next section. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tyler. So now we're going to hear from members of the Technical Committee. So the Technical Committee is an important piece of the governance of AWS, and they ultimately have responsibility for sifting, sorting and agreeing the feedback that's come in through the process managed by Tyler. With that, I'll hand over to Christina and Rolf. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Scott, and great to be here. Also from my side, congratulations on the launch of the third version of the standard. It's been quite a process and I'm really glad to be here and talk about it today. I'll look at 3 points first that I thought might be of interest for everybody listening in and that I thought were great to see in the revision of the standard towards version 3. First, also from my background working in climate change, it has been great to see the further inclusion of the topic more explicitly in the standard. From droughts to floods and changes in when and how it rains, in many regions, the impact of a changing climate are felt via changes in the water cycle. Of course, efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are key. At the same time, understanding the impacts of climate change is crucial for achieving water stewardship outcomes. This is now further integrated in the standard with clear understanding and increases through the gold, platinum, and criteria. So we start at core with understand further how climate change will impact you and go through gold and platinum to understand what are the options. This further integration will help sites and the basins they are located in to prepare and act, as you cannot really negotiate with the laws of physics and with the water cycle. Now, another part that is key to see, and I'm really glad to see in version 3 of the standard, as Tyler just mentioned, is the further clarification of collective action. How to start was another key aspect, not only, but also how to contribute, how to document it. What is the difference between collective action as a core, platinum, or gold level? again, crucial to help companies get started and really contribute to the basin level outcomes. Now, another part that we've also already heard, and I want to emphasize, is that the revision, while it did include new sections or extended clarifications, overall was aimed at streamlining. That means taking the experience of where the last 2 years, for many practitioners, we've heard the many comments. And again, want to thank everybody who took the time to provide input via the survey or via the forum. We did look at every single comment, and I really want to thank everyone who's put really constructive ideas forward. And with that, we have still achieved a reduction of the overall requirements needed, which will further help streamline the preparation and the audit process itself. Now, what does that overall mean? I think we are, with version 3 of the standard, taking a step forward, and that's a great sign to see, not only for the Alliance for Water Stewardship as organizations, but also from members that can now build on the work of the version 3 of the standard. Then 2 more points from my side before I hand over to my fellow TC member, Rolf. The overall quality of the feedback was incredible. People really took a lot of time and effort to provide detailed feedback, share their experience in a constructive way aimed at building a standard that can go even further. And what that also showed to me is the relevance of the standard. There is great commitment both in the membership and in the practitioners to move water stewardship forward and to do that via the AWS standard, showing also the relevance of such a standard in this space. Thank you very much again, also Italian team, for the great work. Of course, also incredible input from José. And with that, I'll hand over to Rolf.
Right. Thank you, Christina. And that's some very nice thoughts there. So yeah, I'd just like to, again, start with a congratulations to the team on a smooth and thorough process. I've been through a standard revision process with another standard, so I know it's not easy. It's intensive. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of voices, a lot of constituents who have different interests. So balancing all of that is a real art, frankly, in itself. So I would just say congratulations to a great job. I would also say that, as a TC member, it was an intensive process first. Yes, we had a lot of meetings, but also we had a lot of time to reflect on the different issues. And I think that was very important because some of these issues were not easy to come up with an easy answer to. So it was great to have that time and that reflection. And I would say a very positive atmosphere and constructive atmosphere within the technical committee, which really helped. So the points I'd like to highlight, I think first is the practicability aspect or the auditability, as Tyler mentioned. Again, from my experience on standards, you can have a wonderful standard on paper, but the implementation can be extremely difficult. Because those often writing the standard were not thinking through enough how it was actually going to be measured on the ground, how implementation was going to be, let's say, approved, or conformance was actually going to be measured by an auditor. So it was really great in this process to have that practical lens in terms of what we were doing. And I think that's going to help, hopefully, everybody from the Secretariat to the auditors, and of course the people who are actually implementing the standard on the ground, that it'll just make things more practical and easier to implement and clearer to do. And part of that process also, we've been working on guidance on the standard, and we've brought WASAS into that process to consult with them, which again is bringing in even finer, if you like, lens to actually having those that do the auditing giving their feedback and thoughts about how things are written, which I think is really important. Some of the highlights for me, I have a background in biodiversity and landscapes, so fantastic to see the focus on ecosystems and biodiversity. especially as freshwater biodiversity is the most threatened when you look at across different themes of biodiversity types like water, forests, freshwater, etc. The species that come up as most endangered are those that are freshwater species. So great to see the focus. I think there it was good. Again, the IWRA, important water related areas, as Tyler mentioned, I think all the aspects were captured across different requirements of the standard. But the focus on ecosystems of biodiversity, I think, is important on one level for reporting and communications, I think for companies implementing the standard, but also to reinforce that focus on those key issues. And I think also that those issues on, let's say, or that those requirements on ecosystems of biodiversity were also reinforced with clarity around the catchment and clarity on collective action. Because in any work that you're doing on biodiversity conservation, stakeholder engagement is really important. Working across larger, let's say, landscape areas, ideally catchments, is also super important in terms of being effective and not being too focused on one particular site, which can be impacted by another. So bringing the, let's say, biodiversity and ecosystems closer to water stewardship, I think, was something very important that's been done. So again, from my side, yeah, congratulations to everybody. And it's great to have been part of the process, and looking forward to seeing how the implementation goes. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Rolf. Thanks very much, Christina. Tyler, coming back to you. Oh, sorry, Mickaël. Sorry. Mickaël?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me well? Okay. So thanks for the opportunity. Few things I wanted to highlight here. The first is, we're kind of very proud at the Nestlé Waters and Premium Beverages because we just we achieved a commitment, to certify all our bottling sites. We achieved that by the end of 2025, and it's really interesting to talk about the V3 because we've used the V2 and the V1. Honestly, it's a great achievement. Lots of pride, lots of work as well. Our journey started with AWS a very long time ago, and the journey with the certification as well. I think the first certification came in 2017 in Pakistan on our side with the Sheikhupura site, and it's amazing to see that this site has already been certified 3 times and will be running for a 4th certification next year. So they will have gone through all the versions of the standard, and honestly, it's tough. It's difficult to get the certification, and it's challenging as well to maintain the certification. So this work requires a lot of involvement and dedication at local level from all teams who are involved. So obviously we were and we still are very interested in a new version, and see it more practical will be key for us. We took the commitment to certify all our sites in 2018, and at this stage we have 39 certified sites. But on top of that, I think there's an additional 20 sites that we certified, which are not part of the portfolio anymore. Some of our sites are platinum certified, so we are also very interested in the advanced indicators, and so that's a huge work, and we have a few learning on this. The first one I would say, this is, the standard is kind of theoretical, but the implementation is very much about, it's not an academic exercise anymore. That's what we call the water stewardship in practice. And if it has to be well done, I think, and that's the way we did it, at least, is that it has to be done by local teams, by factories. It's not people from headquarters moving to sites and doing the work. I don't think it would bring the benefit it deserves. And on our side, that was one of the key factors of success. You need a strong buy-in from the top management, but you need an implementation from the local level. And local level in factories are engineers, for most of them, and they're very used to standards. They're very used to audits. So it's really important to talk the same language. There's one thing which they were not completely used to, is more to be audited on stakeholder engagement, and stakeholder engagement, I think, is been the central piece of the standard in the V1, V2, and V3, and that is great. So, but auditing, and processing stakeholder engagement is not mathematics. So it's a little bit different, and that's why on our side it's a kind of factor of success. I think as well is that we decided in parallel and even before the AWS Standard to process stakeholder engagement through an internal software. So it's mandatory. All the sites, they have to go through very, very strict process with interviews of local stakeholders and including questions on water challenges, water opportunities, and on quality, quantity, biodiversity, and so on. So this helped a lot. I'd finish this on our achievement, say, because it's important as well. You want the people to implement the standard. They need to understand what's in it for them. So you need to spend time with your teams to raise awareness and to explain all the benefit they can get out of that. And at the corporate level, the company level, I think the benefit is kind of obvious. First of all, this standard, and even more than before, it allows to have one methodology, one framework, and it brings a lot of consistency. And on top of it, it brings, of course, recognition, a third-party recognition, which is very valuable. But there's also something which is very important. I think this is well reflected in the new version, and it's worth reminding that all the time, is that the AWS Standard, the mindset, the philosophy, is about continuous improvement. Okay, it's not you achieve the certification means that you're totally perfect. It's always about improving. So you identify challenges and you work on the challenges, and you need to progress year after year, audit after audit, and that's the key. I think the key piece. Now on the V3, honestly, super work. It's been years of work. I've seen that. I was part of the TC myself in the past. I want to congratulate all the technical committee members, but I think the way they worked with you guys, Tyler and José, has been great. It's a super job. Honestly, I think the briefing was very tough because it was both make it more, let's say, more simple, but yet you need to keep its robustness, its integrity, and that's the most difficult. Make it more simple, but yet premium, and that's what you did. I think some indicators in the previous version were kind of a bit time consuming versus the benefits they were bringing. There's been a lot of work on this. And definitely, as it's been mentioned, I think it's clearer. I guess it's more auditable and it's better streamlined. There's no doubt. Also, I'd like to emphasize the fact that I think in the new version, the core level is very much about the foundations of water stewardship. It's very much, to me, focused and dedicated to these foundations through a very accurate diagnosis. You need to work on the shared water challenges, but this is both based on facts, science, but also on stakeholder engagement. And this has to be very strong, very robust, very consolidated. I never believe that you can jump straight away from scratch to collective action. And any company who would follow the standard, I think, is going step by step. And that's the right way to do it. So that's very valuable. Now on the standard, obviously we'll be waiting for the guidance. Any user will know that it's great to have a very precise guidance with templates, and we've discussed that as well with the TC and the team. I know you're working on this, and that will be very, very, very helpful. Last point on my side is like more what's next. Now we have a super standard. The idea was not only to make it more simple, it was also a new standard to scale the certification up, and that's what we have to do. A few hundreds of sites are AWS certified today in the world, but we need much more. And I believe this is precisely the mission of AWS. It's not only to build and deliver standards, it's also to advocate for the standards, and that's what we are expecting now. It's a very strong advocacy for a higher recognition of the standard, at every, especially at authorities level, local, national, or regional. But we need this standard to be recognized as a best practice, because it is the best practice. There's no premium standard on water stewardship such as this one. So it should be recognized, and to me, it should be incentivized as well. So I think that's the next move, and this will be virtuous in terms of pushing members or new members coming, to certification. So happy to discuss this further. If not now, of course, during maybe, I'm sure many of you will be in Scotland in June, so we can discuss all that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mickaël. And thank you for the plug for the forum. Related to that, what Mickaël has demonstrated is that if you look at the relationship between AWS and the standard, so our mission is to ignite and nurture global and local leadership in credible water stewardship. The standard is a manifestation of that. The role for AWS is to ignite and nurture interest in using the standard, ignite and nurture action to against the standard. Give a plug for our communities of practice things that we have, because we're very keen to promote peer-to-peer learning from, as Mickaël noticed and noted, there's some sites that have kind of certified 2-3 times now. We want to share that from speakers directly to users rather than it coming from AWS. I'll also talk in the Q&A later on about other support from AWS related to the guidance and training and so on and so forth. And then the other point that Mickaël was talking about incentives. Incentives and driving up kind of recognition and demand for good water stewardship is kind of one of the key focus areas for AWS in our strategy going forward. With that, I will hand over to Tyler.
Great. Thank you, Scott. I'm going to be just speaking briefly about really what comes next. I can see already there's a number of questions about the guidance in the chat, so that is the first point to address. So we're at a point now where, the standard version 3 has been published as of last week. It's available in several different language versions. So we have Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Bangla, and French, I believe, if I'm not missing any. So I do encourage you to please download and read the standard. There's also the summary of changes document to accompany that, which gives a detailed explanation of what has changed between version 2 and version 3. So next up is the question of guidance. So the guidance to accompany version 3, the standards, is in the final stages of review, and that's set to be released by the end of April. So please do bear with us. We really do recognize the centrality of the guidance to implementation of the standard, and we want to make sure that we get that right. So, revising the standard in itself was a big undertaking, and the guidance is equally as important. The second piece is around training. So registration for AWS Standard System training on version 3, the standard, is now available. So our AWS Standard System training is kind of our flagship offering for training. It's a comprehensive course which consists of 4 half-day sessions, and it's been fully updated to version 3 of the standard. So this will help equip you with the knowledge and practical understanding you need to apply version 3 with confidence. For those who have recently completed AWS Standard System training since 2022, we will be offering access to an on-demand learning module, which explains the changes introduced in version 3 to help you with the transition from version 2 to version 3. That's expected to be offered in late April, and the details of that will be communicated. And finally, audits against version 3 of standard will become available starting in May. So I believe there's already a couple of audits scheduled for May getting into June against version 3. So WSAS will be offering those from May onwards. On that, so now that the standard has been published, we'll have a 1-year transition period. After that transition period, all the initial and recertification audits will be conducted against version 3. For those sites who are already certified against version 2 or that choose to get certified against version 2 within the 1-year transition period, all of your surveillance audits will be conducted against version 2. And sites also can choose to receive a new certification audit against version 3 before their existing version 2 certificate expires, if that's of interest. So all that information is available again on the website. Would encourage you to contact us with any further questions. And speaking of questions, we now have, I think, the remainder of the session to hear your questions and hopefully provide some answers. So I'll hand it back over to Scott to share that.
Yeah, thanks very much. There's a question that relates to something that Mickaël said earlier on that I'll kind of pick up on first. It's from Chiara at PMI. As mentioned by Mickaël, we'd also welcome AWS engagement with authorities and local public stakeholders, with such engagement being incentivised and consistently recognised at global level as best practice, at least in each single location where sites are actively implementing it. I wholeheartedly agree that kind of water stewardship needs to connect with the public sector, etc., etc., etc. So, for example, we recently introduced training for the public sector, so trying to incentivise the public sector to connect with water stewardship and leverage water stewardship. Going the other way around, sort of like, I think that it's definitely a priority for AWS to pick up on. The question is how, because in practice we're a relatively small NGO, and our standard system and our standard is used in kind of hundreds and hundreds of locations around the world, so we don't have people who can actively go out and engage the public sector in specific places. So the question is, how do we equip the users of the standard system to adequately engage with the public sector? I think that is one of the key priority topics that AWS will be picking up as we progress into version 3 of the standard. There was also a question on training, and we mentioned training quite a lot. I want to call on Agni, a training manager. Agni, firstly, when are the sessions for the training? When do they kick off for version 3? And then there's a question from Azantha. Will there be bridging training sessions for AWS for the previously trained staff internal auditors on version 2? And when will it be going to happen? So, like, people who've been trained before, is there a bridging training to version 3?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Scott. So your first question, happy to announce that the schedule for AWS Standard System Training on version 3 is now available on our website. I would be grateful if our colleague can, I think, repost the link to our website is actually there in the chat box. The first training would be organized on the first week of April, starting 7th of April. It's a 4 half days of training, a comprehensive module which will provide you with sufficient knowledge and practical skills to implement AWS Standard version 3. And your second question, the bridging training course, we call it, or in Tyler's presentation, he mentioned about this, a quick on-demand learning module. This is exactly what Asanta is asking for. It's a quick course designed to help those who have been trained against version 2 of the standard to quickly implement the changes in version 3. The link to access this quick course would be made available to the trainees that are already within our database. It's part of AWS service to our capacitated pool of experts to help them build capacity around the new standard.
Okay, great. Just one other final training question. Is training going to be available in Arabic?
Well, the three primary languages remain. So English, Spanish, and Chinese training courses will be made available regularly. However, if for example, there are companies or specific organizations are interested in having training in languages other than these three, then please contact us and we can explore exclusive training courses where we can employ simultaneous interpretation to meet your requirement.
Okay, thanks, Agni. Question for you, Jose. When will WSAS be ready to audit against version 3 of the standard?
Yes, thank you. I think it was also mentioned in one of the slides of Tyler. They are now working on adapting the systems. They have also training the auditors, and it's expected by the beginning of May to be in the position to offer audits against the version 3. It depends a bit on the time for implementation for the sites or adaptation if they are coming from version 2 to version 3 on the changes. But beginning of May is the 2026 is the target.
Okay, great. I just circling back to the presentations. I've sort of got two questions for my own interest. The collective action piece about the different requirements at core, gold, platinum. Tyler, could you kind of like just give a bit more colour to that in terms of what the different requirements are?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the real distinction we wanted to make was before it was kind of treated as a binary. It's like, are you doing collective action or are you not? I think we sought to recognize that collective action is probably more of a spectrum, and it starts with things like engaging your stakeholders, being a part of local water governance initiatives and platforms, and builds from there to increasingly kind of more complex partnerships, more advanced roles in terms of governance and decision making and shared priorities. So we wanted to treat it kind of along a spectrum. And I'm not sure if people recall, I think the penny dropped on this at the forum, the last forum, where we had a question from the audience, and I believe Hannah Belletta from the TC kind of gave this direction. So that's the change. So requirement criteria 3.7 is what deals with collective action in the implement step of the standard, and we set out those kind of increasingly I guess advanced requirements at the core gold and platinum levels. And again, those details are in the summary document.
Great, thanks, Tyler. Just one last thing. You mentioned about how frequently the TC have been meeting. Now that the standard's done, what does the TC do? So I'm like,
well, I think we pause for breath. I think there's still some work to do on finalization of the guidance. That has been, again, we've continued to meet frequently in the last few months working on the guidance. So obviously there's work to be finished there. And then I think we look to what's next in terms of updates and improvements to the certification requirements, again, which is under the remit of the TC, as well as to dealing with any sort of any issues that might arise with version 3, as well as to looking forward to potential development of other standards or guidance.
Great, thanks very much. I'm going to wrap things up now. I just want to kind of circle back on the point about the relationship between the Alliance and the Standard. So what you're kind of seeing is a conversation about governance in terms of how the Standard is kind of owned by the Technical Committee, which is representative of members. A question about the role of the system, role of the Alliance in terms of advocating for adoption of the Standard and also pushing for kind of connections with wider stakeholders and public sector, etc., etc. And also a fundamental role of the system in terms of kind of igniting and nurturing the nurturing part. So how to do this stuff. As I said, I'll give a plug again for the forum, give a plug again for the communities of practice and the peer-to-peer learning stuff. And I'd also direct you to download the Standard first and foremost. So get started on your water stewardship journey by downloading the Standard at our website. Again, a plug for kind of the impact evaluation in terms of building an internal business case and recognition that the Standard works. Finally, a plug for the Global Water Stewardship Forum. Anyone who's not been, please, I strongly recommend. Question from Becky at Diageo. Who should we contact if our questions have not been answered today's call? Me. So Scott at a4ws.org. And then I'll direct it internally. So SCOTT at a4ws.org. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Megan. All right, great. Thanks a lot, team. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.